Wilson is clearly the greatest passer among the true dual-threat quarterbacks in NFL history. Thus, this makes him the best dual-threat signal caller in NFL history. Among the top 10 rushing quarterbacks, he also is one of just 3, along with Elway and Young, that have won a Super Bowl. LaVar is back, but Acho, is it crazy to say this already about dangerous?
Bro, this is what I hate. LaVar, this is what I hate. Marcellus, I hate this. I like Russell Wilson. Came in a draft together. Russell Wilson's a very, 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 very good quarterback. But people make such outlandish statements about Russell Wilson and his greatness that now we have to come bring everybody to reality. So then they get mad at us for just trying to tell people what was real in the first place. People come out after Russell Wilson's 8-9-year career. Russell Wilson's one of the greatest of all time. Can you pump the brakes and let his career finish? Acho, you're a hater. People come out, Russell Wilson, the greatest dual-threat quarterback of all time. Can you pump the brakes just as Acho, you're a hater. Everybody relax. If Russell Wilson doesn't get, I'm not going to say he got carried to that first Super Bowl, but if he doesn't play with one of the best defenses of the decade and doesn't have that first Super Bowl, I'm just wondering the perception and how vastly different it would be around Russ. But let me get to the question. Is he already the greatest dual-threat quarterback in NFL history? No, and it's not an indictment on Russell Wilson, but you got some names now. I'm not going with the low-hanging fruit. I'm not going with Steve Young. I'm not even going to go with Mike Vick. I'm going to go with Randall Cunningham. Okay. Can we go full screen on these dual-threat QBs? Y'all exhausted me with this one. Randall Cunningham, talk about it. When Randall Cunningham in 1990, that was Randall Cunningham's highlight season. Russell Wilson 2014, his best dual-threat highlight season. Randall Cunningham had, just a few less passing yards, had more touchdowns, had more rushing yards, one less rushing touchdown. He was a runner-up in MVP, and Russell Wilson hasn't even gotten a vote and didn't get a vote that year. Randall Cunningham's body of work, greater than Russell Wilson. Also, Randall Cunningham played for more years. And Randall Cunningham's high has been greater than Russell Wilson's high. Yes, Russell Wilson has a Super Bowl ring. The Seattle Seahawks have a Super Bowl ring. That Super Bowl team. But to say that Russell Wilson is already the greatest dual threat of all time, it's ludicrous, but it's also disrespectful. It's disrespectful to OGs like Randall Cunningham. Go ahead, LaVar. Go ahead.
He has accomplished more than Randall Cunningham. I hate to say that, but that's just the reality of it.
Individually?
Individually? That Super Bowl ring, and I'm a big Randall Cunningham fan. That definitely sets him apart from Randall Cunningham.
Individually, he's accomplished more than Randall Cunningham.
If you look at the body of work, I think that is comparable enough where the Super Bowl sets it apart. I'll say that in terms of direct discussion point against Randall Cunningham. But when you look at it, the only one that you're going to look at and say legitimately was considered to be a true dual threat running quarterback that had greatness and success in the recent years of the NFL is Michael Vick. When you're talking about John Elway and Steve Young was a running quarterback, but Steve Young was never considered to be a dual threat, a true dual threat quarterback. All right, that terminology evolved. Oh, it's certain. Steve Young was a running quarterback. Randall Cunningham, a running quarterback. I'll give you slash. Cordell Stewart might have been the first one where we started to look at it as here is a dual threat, a tailback at the quarterback's position. And we can debate that all day. But all I'm saying is by making my point, Michael Vick would be the one that would be the direct argument in this circumstance. And even he does not stand up to what Russell Wilson has accomplished. I think it's safe to say that Russell Wilson is the greatest dual threat quarterback to play in the National Football League to date.
Man, I heard a lot. I don't even know where to go.
I hear nothing good. First of all, I hear nothing good, Marcellus.
I have to say, I think it is crazy to say that Russell Wilson is already the best dual threat quarterback in history. Like LaVar, probably not so much Acho. I did grow up watching Steve Young and really being able to digest Steve Young, and he was a dual threat quarterback. He played in the league.
He could run well.
He could run the football. He played in the league when they were like, it's a liability to be a dual threat. Like, they were mad that he would take off and run. One of the things that was like a negative towards him in narrative was that he ran too much, some people would say. But let's not let that fool you into thinking that he could not throw the football. This dude could throw the football. Let's talk about him in terms of his completion percentage at the time, 66.7%. To give you perspective, the league average was like 10 points lower than that. Guys were barely getting to 60%. He was at 66%. But let me hit you with a full screen so I can give you guys some framework before I go a little deeper into it. Full screen. Steve Young versus Russell Wilson. And we got to give you their years, their primary years, because Steve Young obviously had to sit until he got his starting opportunity. Win percentage, go Steve Young. Completion percentage, go Steve Young. Passer rating, the same. Yards per attempt, go Steve Young. Why now I got to take that off? Let's highlight the passer rating aspect. In those years, you were talking about guys that their passer ratings, the high was like in the 70s. And Steve Young did a 102. Like Russell Wilson now is doing 102, but the average now this season is 95. Steve Young was so far ahead of his time in terms of being a dual threat that we probably don't even fully respect him.
But that's what I'm making. That's the point that I'm making, though.
What point you making?
I'm making it.
What you talking about?
Here's the point that I'm making, Macho Acho, is that if we were to look at how many times those plays were called for Steve Young to run versus Steve Young creating on the move, all right? To me, dual threat means I go into the huddle. Do y'all understand what RPO means? Do y'all understand what that means? That's run pass option, meaning that we want the play call to say he may run. I am looking at this, I'm calling this, he is going to run. To me, that's dual threat. Now, if we're saying the person that has the ability to make things up and improvise during the play, that makes you a dual threat, then fine. My argument is off. I want to know, you're calling plays. You are calling the Wildcat, the RPOs. That is a dual threat. You are putting somebody that could be a receiver or a running back at the quarterback's position. Dual threat.
Calling it doesn't make you it. You can send a running back out to run a route. It doesn't make him a receiver. It doesn't make him have the ability to catch. He's just running a route.
That makes him a dual threat if he can. That's why Marshall Faulk was so valuable, because he was a multiple faceted.
But the fact that they call it doesn't make him it. The fact that they can do it is what makes him it. It doesn't matter if you call me what you call me. It matters what I am.
It does matter. And the reason why it matters is that your ability to call plays with Marshall Faulk leaving the backfield and becoming a receiver, he's a multi-threat because he can run plays like a receiver. You don't have running backs that have that ability to be a multi-threat. Sometimes you don't even have running backs that can be
bring it back to
able
Russ,
to run in between the tackles or outside of
Bring it back to Russ and Steve Young. Let me hear it concisely.
Yeah, right. So here's the thing. When you look at Steve Young, they were not calling. Their playbook did not consist of having Steve Young run plays. Going into the huddle. This is the play. This is the play. Steve Young was creating. We saw Steve Young take off when plays broke down, create time to give Jerry Rice.
Creating, play calling. The result
was not called, though.
Whatever you want to say, Steve Young became a threat, whether he was throwing the football or he was running the football. That was the end result. So, look.
But it was not established.
In my comparison, I'm looking at a guy who's won 2 MVPs versus a guy who hasn't even got an MVP vote yet. My comparison says you're a Super Bowl MVP, Steve Young, and Russell Wilson wasn't a Super Bowl MVP. My comparison says Steve Young won a Super Bowl with a NFL record, Super Bowl record, 6 touchdown passes, 325 yards, and no interceptions, where some people would say Russell Wilson was kind of carried
to
that same Super Bowl.
Like you said, I was there watching them games just like you were watching.
And that Super Bowl interception that kept him from his second one when they put it all on.
Let's not lose sight of the fact of who he was throwing the ball to when he had them teams where he was putting up all them yards. The greatest football player of all time in the history of the game, not even disputable. Jerry Rice. He had guys. He had guys.
But even to that,
guys. John Taylor.
Even to that, though, LA, yes, you can say that he had guys, but then you also have to acknowledge
he had the guys.
We're not even factoring in inflation. Like, we're not even factoring in the fact that quarterbacks weren't passing for yards back then. Marcellus, he touched on it, but let me really hammer the point home. What, in 1990, the average starter was throwing 196 yards a game. Now in 2020, it's 250 yards a game. Yeah, so if you just adjust for the fact that the game has changed, imagine what Cunningham's stats would be. Oh, I could tell you. In 1990, Randall Cunningham, adjusting for inflation, would have thrown for 4,400 yards. To Russell Wilson, his best season, his 3,600 yards. If you're going to talk about the guys of the past, you also at least got to acknowledge the game has changed. The game is more pass-friendly, pass-happy, and acknowledge, wait a second, Steve Young and Randall Cunningham would have been doing even more.
But that was innovative West Coast offense. See, you're going into a whole nother conversation. Bill Walsh ushered in a whole new era of throwing the ball around and spreading the ball around. So to me, I don't look at that argument as validating the whole scenario, because you're looking at, like, we could say that about Bruce Smith or Lawrence Taylor. You know, they didn't even use two tight ends when Lawrence Taylor was in the league. Lawrence gets all of these sacks, and now all of a sudden you're putting two tight ends so that you could have max protection. Things change, things evolve based upon the success that people had. Steve Young was a benefactor of a Bill Walsh-led team that came in with a new innovative way of moving the ball downfield. It opened up run lanes for him to be able to run because everybody was so busy trying to cover all of the weapons that were running downfield for the 49ers. But, you know,
yeah, but let me
just one man's opinion.
Let me button this up by saying you can't be the best dual threat in NFL history if you haven't been the best passer or the best runner throughout your playing time, throughout your era. Russell Wilson, is he the best passer? No. Is he the best rusher? No. Matter of fact, he's second to Cam Newton in rush yards, despite Cam playing 21 fewer games. And you talk about what you saw out of Steve Young. Oh, he led all quarterbacks in rushing over those 8 years. So you can't be best all time. Hey, that's my point. You got to at least win your era if you're going to win all time at least.